Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you at this webinar, the third in our series. My name is Agnieszka Wejner, and I will be your moderator today. And I would like to introduce Zara Pinheiro Lozano from the delegation of the European Union to Canada, who will welcome us more formally at this event.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Good morning to all. So my name is Zara, and I'm a program officer here at the EU delegation to Canada, so based in Ottawa. And it's really a great pleasure to welcome you all to this third information session that will focus on Cluster 4, Digital, Industry and Space. I can see that we have, again, a great number of participants, which is really great news. We're very happy about this large audience because it really demonstrates the great interest on Horizon Europe amongst all the researchers in Canada. So today, we're going to follow a very similar structure to previous webinars that we have organized on Cluster 2 and Cluster 6. And that is, we're going to provide more detailed and specific information on the work program and guidelines of Cluster 4. Here, we will count with the great knowledge and experience of Helene Derezowski, who is the Horizon Europe National Contact Point for Digital at the Ministry of Higher Education and Research in France. So we're very happy that we can count on her experience today. And then her intervention will be followed by that of our experts, Maria and Sanders, Barry Sanders, who will provide also important facts and details about the process of proposal writing and evaluation. We really think it is particularly important to share this type of information because we believe it can be decisive when deciding whether to apply to Horizon Europe call or not. We will also count and hear testimonials from Marie and Alessandra, and they will provide real-life experiences on, how to form a consortium and how to implement a Horizon Europe project. And today, we're also very happy that we can count with the presence of Tamara Sone, who is a very important partner for the EU, as she is the national contact point coordinator for Horizon Europe at ISED. And she will be able to provide with information about what she and her team can do to support you in all the application process and also more general on Horizon Europe. So the objective and the main aim of organizing these webinars is really because the intention of the EU delegation is to make sure that the Canadian association to Horizon Europe is a success, and therefore we would like to have as many Canadian researchers as possible apply to Horizon Europe and show interest in this cause. And of course, we would like to encourage these exchanges between Canada and Europe. So I'm hoping also that through this webinar and the Q&A session that we will have at the end, there will be a possibility for you to exchange. But we're not stopping here with the webinars. We are doing more to disseminate and to inform about Horizon Europe. Our colleagues from ISED and ourselves in the EU delegation and our colleagues in Brussels have just very recently concluded a Horizon Europe roadshow in Vancouver, in Edmonton, and in Saskatoon. And very soon we will have more information sessions, so another road show in 4 days, starting in Montreal, and then followed by Halifax and St. John's. So with all these information sessions, both virtual and live in person, we really hope to encourage as many Canadian researchers and other stakeholders as possible to apply for Horizon Europe, and we really hope that these exchanges are fruitful and useful for you. So without any further ado, I would like to pass on the floor to Agnieszka, our moderator, and I would really like to wish you a very fruitful and informative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Zara. So before we start, I wanted to clarify a little bit the housekeeping. You are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A chat that we have in this webinar. Some of your questions will be answered as we go. Some of them we will keep until the Q&A part of our meeting. So don't be shy and just write whatever you would like to know. The session is recorded, so it means that it will be also available later on the YouTube channel of the delegation of the European Union to Canada, and all participants will receive the link. I think that we can actually start now. So I would like to invite Hélène Dereszowski, who is the European Research Project Officer at Le Mans University and the national contact point for Horizon Europe course in Cluster 4, Digital Stream, at the Ministry of Higher Education and Research in France. Hélène, if you can come, you're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Agnieszka. Thanks a lot. I will share my presentation right now. So thank you. Good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you to begin with. I would like to thank EU Canada Policy Support Facility and the EU delegation for the invitation to this webinar. So, as Agnieszka said, I am Hélène Dereszowski. I am a member of the French Digital National Contact Points team at the Ministry of Higher Education and Research in France. She said I work 30% of my time as NCP, National Contact Point, and I work the other part-time of my work time as a European Research Project Officer at Le Mans University. So what are National Contact Points, or NCP, for Horizon Europe? It is a main structure to provide guidance, practical information, and assistance on all aspects of participation in Horizon Europe. So in France, the NCP system is placed under the authority of the Ministry of Higher Education and Research. And the main missions of the NCPs are to inform and raise awareness of French research and innovation communities about Horizon Europe funding opportunities, to help, advise, and train project leaders to the program procedures. So in France, we are in total 19 teams of NCPs covering different sub-programs of Horizon Europe, like the European Research Council, for example, and the clusters of Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. Most of the person in general work part-time as a mission of NCP. And for Cluster 4, digital industry and space, 3 teams of NCPs operates. That you can see and you can see all the email address for each of the stream, like a digital industry and space. So briefly, to be more precise concerning my team of NCP Digital, We are a team of 3 persons with Gaël Mogis working as well 40% of his work time as NCP, and who is also a European project manager for competitiveness cluster. Ismail Niar, who is also NCP for 40% of his time, and who is also a university professor specialized in edge artificial intelligence. And we were in close collaboration with Isabelle de Sutter, who is the French delegate to the Program Committee on Digital Calls. So she intervenes upstream and represents France in the preparation of Cluster 4 work program for digital calls. Our team is in place for until the end of May, and a new team will be in place from June on. So my presentation will take place in 3 stages. First, I will go quickly, present briefly the Cluster 4, some outlooks for the trains on digital calls in 2025, and some rules of participation. Secondly, we will dive into the logic of the Cluster 4 work program, how it works, what is a work program. And thirdly, I will give you some general pieces of advice on how to set up a project and how to find partners in consortium. So, as you know, so Pillar 2 has a top, the approach of the calls for proposals under the Pillar 2 Global Challenges and European Industrial Competitiveness is top-down, and the approach is to support the European Union's strategic political priorities and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As you know, the pillar also is divided in 6 clusters, from treating different themes from health to food bioeconomy, and Cluster 4 is the 4th one regarding digital industry and space. So calls for proposal here are focused on identified societal needs and global challenges. And all the project proposals should address the expected impacts identified and provide with technological or non-technological options, solutions, or recommendations. So funded projects under Pillar 2 are always collaborative, transdisciplinary, transsectoral, meaning there is a collaboration between academic actors and non-academic actors like industrials, and transnational. They last in average 3 to 4 years, and the minimum funding is in general around 2 to 3 million euros per project, and in average it's 4 to 6 million euros. And 3 types of projects can be funded that I will present later. I would like to focus as well to briefly present as well the partnerships, because they have an important role as well in the research and innovation landscapes of the European Union, and they are related as well to Horizon Europe. I present here quickly the European partnerships, which are linked to Cluster 4. First, the institutionalized partnerships, which is the most integrated form of partnerships that enables the European Commission to get into joint undertakings with key industrial stakeholders in a specific sector. And they have their own strategic and research innovation agenda and organize their own calls for proposals. So there are only institutionalized partnerships concerning the digital streams, like as you can see, like dealing with the chips, the semiconductor industry, the smart networks and services about 5G and 6G, high performance computing, and European metrology about the measurement community. And there are also co-program partnerships, which are based on memorandum of the understanding between the European Commission and industry association in different sectors. So they have to identify strategic axes of the work programs and then contribute to the development of certain calls. You can see after in the work programs that some calls for proposal are linked to a partnership, co-program partnerships. So there are 3 in industry dealing with manufacturing for Made in Europe, processes for planet and circularity, clean steel, low carbon steel making. There is 1 in space partnership, and in digital there are 3 co-program partnership, which ADRA, AI Data Robotics Association, Photonics 21, and Virtual Worlds, which will open in 2025. Just how does it work? I'm talking about work programs, but what is it? So, as you know, Horizon Europe is a multi-annual framework program of the European Union for research and innovation that goes from 2021 to 2027. in order to rationalize the preparation of the calls for proposals and for the pillars 2 of Horizon Europe, the European Union has decided to draft strategic plans based on the public consultations. So there are 2 for the Horizon Europe. The first one was going from 2021 to 2024, and the second one for 2025 to 2027. And based on this basis, biannual or annual work programs for each cluster are designed and adopted. The letter details the call for proposal for the targeted period, and on the slide you will find the link to all the documents I mentioned. Just for your information, there is a draft version of the work program 2025, which has not been adopted yet, which will be adopted next month. So cluster 4, I come back little, I go little by little. So I was talking about the strategic plan 2025-2027. The letter has identified 3 interrelated key strategic orientations, which are the green transition, the digital transition, and a more resilient, competitive, inclusive, and democratic Europe. On this basis, from this, 32 expected impacts have been identified. They will correspond actually to the destinations we can find in the program. So destinations, this key expected impacts has to be understood as general aims or general objective to reach. And out of the 32 expected impacts, 6 concern the cluster 4. So the first 2 expected impacts or destinations are more related to industry. So destination 1 is about achieving the global leadership in climate neutral, circular, and digital industrial and digital value chains, or that we call also twin transition, where we can find also proposals for themes of manufacturing, construction, circular, and zero pollution industries. The second destination is about achieving technological leadership in Europe's open strategic autonomy in raw material, chemicals, and innovative materials, that we call materials, where you can find the themes of raw materials, innovative advanced materials, and safe and sustainable by design materials. Concerning the stream digital, in red, so the third destination is about developing an agile and secure single market and infrastructure for data services and trustworthy artificial intelligence services that we call data. The fourth destination is about achieving open strategic autonomy in digital and emerging enabling technologies, so digital emerging. And the sixth destination, which is about digital and industrial technologies driving human-centric innovation, human. In destination 4 and 6, you can also find some also proposals related more to industry. And this destination 5 is focused on space, with the objective to achieve open strategic autonomy in global space-based infrastructures, services, applications, and data. So quickly for the trains, the outlook for 2025 for the digital calls, the estimated opening and closing call dates would be so the 10th of June, with the closing date on the 2nd of October. For destination 3 data, main focus will be networks, infrastructure, data ecosystem, more or less 8 topics. I will explain later what is a topic. You will see what is a topic. Our plan with about 15 to 20 projects to be selected. Destination 4, digital emerging, will be more focused on quantum, photonics, AI, generative general purpose AI. Around 10 topics are planned with about 20 to 25 projects to be selected. And third, the destination 6, human, will be more focused on secure and inclusive human centers and bias-free virtual worlds, generative AI, Web 4.0, and international cooperation, with 7 topics planned. And about 20 projects to be selected. So briefly, here the budget and numbers, of course, are given for information only and not a commitment from the digital NCP. We will only for validation and publication of work program 25 will formalize the dates, budgets, and contents. So as I said, so normally this month the work program will be voted by the member states and associated countries, and in April the work program 2025 should be adopted and published by the European Commission. I give you as well some information for the perspective for 2026-2027, so next work program, where first draft should be edited next month and second draft in June, and publication in official adoption by December 2025. As I said before, there are 3 types of collaborative projects that can be funded. So first, there are research and innovation actions that goes from technology readiness level of 2 with the experimental proof of concept to up to 5 with validation in relevant environments. By the end of the project, those projects aim to establish new knowledge or explore the feasibility of a new technology or improved technology product process. It funds basic and applied research, technology development, integration, testing. And EU funding for this type of projects is 100% of the eligible costs, whatever the status of the legal entities participating. Second, the innovation action goes from TRL 5 to TRL 8 by the end of the project with a complete system completed and qualified. So it's the projects aim to produce plans and arrangements or design for new products, service, processes, service, prototyping, testing, demonstration, and EU funding here is 100% of the eligible cost, except for-profit entities like enterprises of any size that can receive EU funding from 60 to 70% of the eligible cost. And thirdly, the coordination and support action, for which no TRL apply. Those are projects that mainly propose support measures like stakeholder networking activities, standardization activities, communication, raising awareness, establishment, production of reports, and like the research and innovation action, the funding is here 100% of all the eligible costs for any type of legal entities. So eligibility criteria, as you know, to participate in a cluster by the Pillar 2 collaborative project, the consortium must at least gather 3 independent legal entities based in 3 different EU member states or associated country, and at least one of which must be established in one of the 27 EU member states. Please note that for each call for proposal, certain specific conditions may appear. More partners needed, fund participation restricted to member states. In that sense, the European Commission can refer to the article 22.5 of the regulation establishing Horizon Europe. And due to strategic assets or interest, autonomy, or security, the calls for proposals can be restricted, or the topics more exactly, can be restricted to legal entity based in EU member states or to legal entity established in specified associated countries. So that is why it is very important to always check the eligibility conditions. Come back quickly. So the plan expenses and eligible costs in a collaborative project are direct costs like staff costs, staff time spent on the project. Direct costs should always be directly linked to the project, and during the project, subcontracting costs, if justified, and other costs like travel and accommodation, equipment, only the depreciation costs, other goods, works, and services like purchase of consumables, conference fees, publication fees. And upon that, a flat rate of 25% of the direct cost will automatically apply, but excluding the subcontract. It will not be calculated on the subcontracting cost, that is the indirect costs. And now I will go, let's go to the second part, which will be more practical. So for that presentation, for this part, I used the last published version of the work program. So the work program 2023-2025, which includes calls for proposal for 2023 and 2024. So what is the work program I'm talking about? It's actually a big document of a few hundred pages like depending on the number of pages, depends on the clusters, but for cluster 4, it's around 500 pages. So how can we find our way in this space? How to read a work program. So first, at the beginning, you have always a table of contents. We present a full list of destinations, goals, headings, and topics. And the introduction, which will present the main political orientations regarding the clusters. Then the document is divided into the 6 destinations of the cluster. So as I said, the destinations of the thematic section introducing the main political orientations and expected impacts, like the main goal to reach, let's say, and then a destination is divided into calls, which is our thematic calls with a list of topics. So, and then the heading within a call, there is a heading, like which is the main theme, theme or one of the theme of the call, and then we go to the heart of the calls for proposal. There is the list of the topics, what we call the topics, the list of topics or subjects, like the calls for proposal, to which that will be open for application for collaborative projects. Or here, I took as a general example, an example from a topic from Destination 6 in 2023. The topic is the heading Extended Reality. Is about is from 2023. It's human. 01 is the numbering of the call, and 21 the number of the topic. So I would as well advise as well to read always the main introduction of the work program, as well as the introduction of the destination, because it will give you main political orientation and expecting impacts. It will introduce the headings and some eligibility conditions. At the end of the presentation of the destination, there is a summary table on the calls that lists all the calls that are included in the destination with their respective year, budget and deadline per year, because here it was for a 2-year work program. So as you see, there is a 01, so we will follow up the call Human 01 Select. Or here Select, it means that it's a call that is managed directly by the European Commission, and it's a Directorate General Select. And the other calls are managed by the European Health and Digital Executive Agency. That's why there is this different reference. And then I will invite you also to look at the condition for the calls. That's where you will have the full list of topics under a call, under a given call. And where you will find the opening and closing dates of the call of all the topics. And for each line, you will have the reference of the topic, the type of action, the indicative budgets for the topic, the expected contribution per project, and the expected number, indicative number of projects expected to be funded. So now we are getting into the heart of the call for proposal. What is the topic? So here we are, follow the same example, we are under the heading Destination 6, called 01 of 2023, and the heading Extended Reality. Here we have the topic reference. I put the link as well to the EU platform where you can find the reference of this call. So the specific conditions, which is always important to read, where you will have all the first, the expected EU funding per project, the total indicative budget for the topic, the type of action, eligibility condition, very important to read. That's where you will have information for if there is any restrictions or not. The expected technology readiness level at the start and at the end of the project, and procedure, where you will have more specific information on the topic. For example, it's not the case in that example, but sometimes you can have some calls from some topics where a financial support for third parties should be included, meaning that the proposal should plan like to organize small calls for proposals that we call also cascade funding. You can find that sometimes in some topics. Here in that example, we can see that there are 2 types of projects that should be funded, meaning that you have to choose one type of project. So then the narrative part describing the topic, which is the heart of the topic. So it's always described into 2 parts. First, the expected outcomes, which are the expected results the collaborative project should target, and then the scope, where you can find the competencies, expertise required to implement the project, potential indication on the domain of application for the use case, potential indication of the expected duration of the project, on expected activities to implement. So here we can see there are 2 expected outcomes identified that I put in purple. I tried to highlight in green the competencies, expertise required within the collaborative project and within the consortium to prepare the proposal and to achieve, to realize the project, and the domains of applications in yellow. Well, that's a suggestion of reading a topic, but each person can have its own way of reading the topic, of course. And then the scope, as we can see, 2 types of projects had to be funded, at least 1 per type. So type 1 was on the development and integration of advanced extended reality hardware components. And I follow, like, you can see still in green the competencies, expertise, and in yellow the end users or application required. And the second type was focused on the development of new solutions, to improve the user experience, skills, and capacity in social and professional extended reality setups. For both types, we could see that the typical duration expected was 36 months, and an effective contribution of social science and humanities disciplines was required, which often means that it's really important to plan to have partners in your consortium from social science and humanities disciplines to bring this effective contribution. So as it was a proposal from 2023 with a deadline, if I remember well, in March 2023, the results were known by July 2023. And in total 5 projects were selected. After we don't know directly all the projects funded, once each project has signed its grant agreement, they are made public. So as you see, 5 projects were at the end funded. So now I'm getting to this last part of the presentation with some general pieces of advice, guidelines. I would always recommend to anticipate as much as possible the call scope proposal, so don't hesitate to contact your national contact points, exchange with your partners, identify the relevant call and topics in the work program. You can review the table of contents, look as well with the keywords in the documents. I don't know if you work on acoustic sensors, you write acoustic or sensors, and you can find topics like that. Always check the eligibility conditions, make sure you can participate, read carefully the topic and identify the expected results, the key competencies required, the potential domains of application, potential targeted end users. And I would recommend the suggestion to list a table with the expected results, competencies, the related political orientation, the related EU programs, because sometimes in some topics there are and a clear expression of synergies with other EU programs that is required or that is expected, reference to previous projects as well sometimes, so any important information required, and that would be can be a document to follow up that you meet all the requirements and anticipate as much as possible the implementation from both the scientific implementation, but of course as well as the administrative one. And to be a coordinator or partner, so as you must know, coordination will always require more administrative time and more coordination time, of course, more human resources. In general, I think it can be easier to start as a project partner to get a first experience. It can be easier after to coordinate, but it's just a suggestion. If you want to be a partner and you look for a consortium to integrate, to get in, I would recommend to establish a short document listing or explaining the competence, the use case, your expertise that you can bring in relation to the topic. I would recommend to first contact your own network, your own partners, especially based in Europe, to exchange with them, easier to start working with people we already know. If you don't have any partners identified, you can look for funded projects under previous similar calls or thematics. For that, you can use the project database of the European Union called CORDIS, which gather all the funded projects, research and innovation projects funded by the EU. And you can contact relevant laureates if relevant. Contact your national contact points. Contact as well for digital project. There is a network idealist that you can contact. You can check on the EU tenders and funding portal, identify and participate in relevant online corporate events. And if you want to be a coordinator, I would recommend to identify as well the competencies, expertise required to complete your consortium and try to identify potential partners. Draft as well a short document presenting the outline of your project in relation to the topics, the competencies you're looking for, and the same pieces of advice apply, like don't touch your own network, use CORDIS, for example. That's all suggestions. And as I said, so looking for international partners, there are some tools. There are the info days organized by the European Commission, brokerage events, like for example for digital, there is a link on the PowerPoint, and you can look for partners, you can look for consortium. The EU funding and tender portal as well, where you can look with keywords. There is as well a database and a part for each topic. There is a section where you can look for expertise or look for partners. And I was talking about Idealis, which is a network of digital national and international contact points that can give you as well some help. There is a link as well in the slide. And last but not least, on May 13th and May 14th, the European Commission will organize an online event about funding opportunities and then Horizon Europe Cluster 4, and for the launch of the 2025 work program. So you have to register to this platform before the event, and to get the EU login to register to the platform. There is as well the link to register to access to the events. And here I put a few resources, like as I said, calls for proposal projects under Pillar 2 aims to support EU strategic political priorities. So it's important as well. I would recommend as well to look a bit at some political priorities that are here. It's about the digital, but for industry, you have as well the Green Deal, the Net Zero Industry Act, to get to know a bit the context, the general context of generating these calls for proposals, and yes, to get this information. It's important as well to get familiar with the vocabulary and the concept behind. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Hélène. That was great. I especially enjoyed the pieces that explained how to read the topic, really, because the devil is in the details, actually in the work plan. For all of you who were asking in the chat, yes, the presentations will be available after the webinar. We will share them with the participants as well as the link to the recording. Okay, I think that this is now the time to invite Maria Pawłowska, who will talk about writing the proposal in cluster 4, which is a very specific cluster because it has quite a lot of elements that are important for industry and technology. So Maria, if I can invite you to share your knowledge in less than half an hour.
Yes, I have all the times written down. Hello, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be speaking after Hélène. I think that was a wonderful introduction, like Agnieszka's pointed out, especially to reading the topic. She said the devil's in the details. It's true, but also that's where the money is, and I think that's worth noting. I'm gonna share my. There we go. I hope you can all see it now. There we go. If it's not working, I'm hoping someone will let me know. Okay, I know at least some of you have already seen me talk about this and will perhaps see me talk about this a few more times. But as Agnieszka has said, every single cluster is different, and we do our best to make sure that we tailor these presentations, and mine especially, to the things you need to know for this particular cluster. So just to begin with the do's and don'ts for those of you who haven't seen these yet, and Ellen has mentioned a lot of these, but it's really important, again, to align your research to the topic. As you've seen, the Commission always know what it wants. Don't try to prove to them they want something else. It's not going to be successful. It never is. So just make sure there's very good alignment between what they're asking for and what you're putting in your application. Give yourself plenty of time. I can't stress this enough. You've gotten an idea of what the timeline is going to be. And whenever, as soon as you can, it's a really good idea to start working on these, reading the documents, getting to know the work program. You will have the incredible pleasure of listening to Professor Barry Sanders speak after me about the evaluation criteria. He has a lot of experience evaluating for the European Commission, and he will tell you what it actually looks like and what the evaluation criteria are. Heads up, spoiler alert, they are very different to what you might be used to with the tri-councils, for example. So it's really important to make sure you're not just writing a tri-councils application. This is nothing like a tri-councils application. There are some transferable skills, but very little. The general writing, good writing, for example. So you have to get into a different frame of mind for this. And choose the right consortium. Again, Ellen has given you pointers on how to do that. It's really important whether you want to coordinate or whether you're joining. The consortium is what gets the project, not an individual institution, not just the way it's written. It's the assembly of these excellent institutions who are perfect for the given topic, not just excellent, but excellent in what they're supposed to do. Okay. So moving on, this is a bit of a workflow for how you want to maybe approach this. Look at the funding intenders portal. If you haven't yet, familiarize yourself with it, set up an account, make sure you know how to work it. It's a bit of a learning curve there, and it's good to get ahead while you still have time. The work program, again, as soon as they're available, make sure you know what's in there. Even the draft work programs, what's out there on the internet. It's really, really good idea to look at those. And you're then choosing a call and you're building or joining a consortium. I'll talk a little bit about that later. Ellen has mentioned some networking events and some info events. There are also specific matchmaking services and networking events and matchmaking events organized, for example, by different countries, whoever has the presidency or of the European Commission, which rotates every 6 months between different countries. Or whichever country has a particular interest, they might organize really big matchmaking events, and you're welcome to attend, whether online or in person. These tend to be a really, really good place to meet other people and other organizations. Assigning roles is a big one. I think our project partners will talk more about that later, but you're in a project to do a particular thing, and it's really important you know what it is. And the way the work package and the application is written, it's very clear why you have been assigned to that particular role in the project. And research services. I know some of you are from research services and research administration. Some of you are researchers yourselves. Please make sure you connect. It's really, really important to connect, if you're a researcher, with your friendly research support services at your institution. Honestly, in Europe, no one does these calls on their own. It is almost and often led by administration. These are very, very big calls. I'll get to the details of that later on how this work is often divided. But and again, I'm trained in the hard sciences. We don't use the word impossible often, but I really would go as far as to say it's almost impossible to have a successful application without a lot of support from research services. I certainly have never heard of one. But since we are talking about cluster 4, I just thought it's a good idea to just draw your attention to some other opportunities around that and ways of building partnerships. You might not know that actually Canada sits on the European Space Agency's Council. That name might be, it says European, but Canada's there as well. And you can reach out to the people there. It's a really, really good place to make these high-level connections that can then trickle down into actual projects. There is a cooperation agreement already in place. What's more, the EU-Canada Digital Partnership was signed last year, increasing specifically cooperation on AI, quantum science, and semiconductors. So you're in a really good place as a Canadian institution, or as someone based as a Canadian institution or a Canadian company, to go from these already established international partnerships to build your own partnerships. So what to look out for in terms of the differences and how you construct your application for what you might be used to then going to Horizon Europe. Gender is the only aspect of DEI that the Commission looks into. In terms of the gender qualifications you can use, it's male, female, and non-binary. And you do need to state for the people in the application which of these genders applies to them. What's important to note, which is different from what a lot of other funders do, gender mainstreaming in research is actually part of the excellence criterion. So it's not an aside for, how do you do DEI? It's how do you mainstream gender into your research and the way you run your project. And it's everything from, do you have women on as researchers, and to how do you consider the needs of other people than males in the way you run your research and the way you design it at the very beginning. And it needs to be shown. And again, it's an excellence criterion. With technology, that is an increasingly an aspect being considered. How are we making sure that these technologies are designed to be as accessible to the greater population as possible? Just to show you how important it is, that this is I've included a screenshot from the materials that the Commission puts out. Gender balance among researchers involved in projects will be strongly encouraged and will be taken into account for equally ranked proposals. So you get points for your proposals, and if there's a proposal that has as many points as yours, but more women amongst the researchers, they will get funded and not you. So this is what the Commission is doing to make sure to raise the number of female researchers in its projects. I'll also just mention very quickly the gender equality plan. You have to make sure your institution has one. That's an eligibility criterion, but I've worked with a number of Canadian institutions around the country. The documents already in place at most Canadian institutions fulfill this requirement. With Cluster 4, there is the added aspect of research security. And what's interesting for you to know, perhaps, is that research security is one of those aspects where probably whatever your institution is doing, it's already more than is required by the Commission at the moment. This will be changing very soon, probably, but at the moment, there are no formal requirements for research security specified in Horizon Europe documents. So whatever it is your institution is doing is probably more than enough. Just heads up, there are, you should look into your institutional policies and federal requirements. There are EU regulations coming up. For example, the EU AI Act. It is not yet in place, but these will be something to consider further down the line when you're thinking about Cluster 4. I can't give you more details now because they're not there. These are all things in development as we speak, but this will be a quickly changing environment very soon, for obvious reasons, I think, to all of us. What is the same for Cluster 4 as for every other cluster in Horizon Europe is the open science requirement, which goes beyond what is currently mandated by the Tri-Councils. The new Tri-Council's open access regulations are in line largely with what the European Commission requires. For example, publications need to be open on publication. There is no gap period. The moment it's out, it needs to be open. There's also an RDM requirement. It is one of a data management plan is one of the documents that needs to be submitted. along with the application or after having granted the project. There is the need to confirm reproducibility and the need to also look at your metadata and make sure it's properly curated. So especially with Cluster 4, it's important to note that the European Commission makes a note here that while retaining its essence of openness to international cooperation, the cluster will ensure the safeguarding of EU strategic assets, interests, autonomy, and security in critical areas such as 5G, 6G, AI, quantum computing, chips, or space technologies. And what's important for you as a Canadian-based institution, researcher, company is that this is on your partner side to deal with. Your European partners will need to ensure they're doing that. There's nothing much you can really do because you are not based in the EU. But this does add an extra level of perhaps complexity if these things do take place in your project. So just something to consider to make sure you're talking about that with your partners, especially since you might have, and you honestly almost definitely need to have an industrial partner, some sort of business, a company. There will be additional consequences with regards to security there. There have been questions about dual use in terms, this is a discussion that has come up, and I think I'm just going to put it out there. This is the guidance notes from the European Commission. For Horizon Europe, only research and innovation activities focusing on civil applications are eligible for funding. There is at the moment, which is to say no dual use in Horizon Europe. So whatever you're doing, if you're doing it for Horizon Europe, it has to be civil applications. Now, you know, there's it's almost a philosophical discussion, right, about what is and isn't dual use. But aside from the philosophical discussion, if it's being funded by Horizon Europe, it is not dual use. However, watch this space because this has just come out, well, not just a year ago, but the conversation's still very much happening. There's a white paper that's been put out on options for enhancing support for research and development involving technologies with dual use potential. So this is a conversation that's happening. This is for the next framework program. I'm just giving you a little heads up, but for now, dual use is not something that happens. So I leave it to you because, you know, you're whoever you are there, you're the expert on what it is you're working on. And we're all very aware that some of these technologies do perhaps cross over into possibilities or potentials for down the line dual use. However, if it's a call in Horizon Europe, then it's for civil use only. Okay, to the actual proposal. This is part A. This is what it looks like. This is the part that's kind of the easy part for you. This gets filled out automatically by the information you've populated into the online spreadsheet. So the one thing I just also wanted to point out, because there's always questions and people want to know, I've just pulled it up. This is what the budget looks like. So you have on average a Horizon Europe around 4.2 million euro. That's an average Horizon Europe grant, which is over 6 million Canadian dollars. But this is the table you fill out. That's it. However, it doesn't look like a lot, but it's going to take a long time for you and your partners. It can take a long time for you and your partners to agree on what exactly is going in there. It can literally take months. I've known it to take over 6 months because, you know, there's all sorts of institutions in all sorts of countries, all sorts of rules and regulations, and people want money and people want to employ people. Obviously, it's something you need to make sure you have time to talk about, and it's something you have to make sure you run by your research services. Because, for example, you know, the way you pay for equipment is something you want to know you've run by your finance offices, because you're not really supposed to buy too much equipment or big equipment through Horizon Europe, for example, right? You can pay for leasing, you can pay for using existing equipment. Don't really have time to go into the details, but it's something you want to make sure if you're a researcher, you've run by your finance people and that everybody's on the same page. All the institutions and their administrations are on the same page with regards to the budget. In terms of the ethics, I've pulled up these two, which pertain mostly to cluster 4, the artificial intelligence and the classified information. Again, you cannot be, as a Canadian-based institution, you shouldn't be, I don't imagine how you would be disclosing classified EU information. You shouldn't really have access to it, right? But this is just, again, to bring it up that this is something your partners need to deal with and consider, and might be an added level of complexity. The artificial intelligence part is something that it might come up, especially in cluster 4. So just to make sure you think about that, and you then elaborate on whatever these ethical concerns are. This is the technical description. So the bulk of the application, and I apologize. I realize I'm talking fast, but there's just so much, and I really don't want to disappoint Agnieszka and be late again. I have 9 minutes, so I'm trying to get through all this as fast as I can, while giving you the information, and hopefully you can understand what I'm saying. So again, the part B, this is the excellence. What we like to think of this, excellence is the what of your project, right? What is the vision? What is it that you want to achieve? And what is your unique approach? Now, these numbers, this is taken again straight from the application. I want to show you exactly what it is you're going to be seeing to then make sure I'm explaining exactly that to you, so that when you look at it, you'll be like, oh, I think I know what this is about. I've heard her talk about it. So when it says, for example, 4 pages, they mean 4 pages. I mean, unless you have an incredibly good reason to write 3 pages or 5 pages, please write 4 pages. Again, the commission knows what it wants. It asks for what it wants. Don't try to prove to them they want something else. Methodology. By the way, excellence, this part is what the researchers write. Majority of this will be, most of the researchers' time will be spent on this. And the methodology, this to me endlessly surprising. I've worked with so many researchers on these applications, different applications, you know, health to quantum to electronics. This is the part where researchers often don't write it as well as they could. It's 14 pages for methodology. You want your researchers, or if you're a researcher, you want to use that up. You want to prove to your reviewers what is unique in your approach, and you need to write it in such a way that is clear to someone who knows about your area but is not an expert in it, the exact thing you do. And Professor Sanders will tell you more about that. But it needs to be effectively, you're aiming this at someone who, you know, is an intelligent person, should be able to understand what is really unique about your approach, and then an expert in the area should really be able to dig down into the details. But you need to take up those 14 pages because, as Hélène has mentioned, and as we can just look up the statistics, there's going to be plenty of other people applying for this money. And it needs to be clear what's so exciting about how you're going to approach the call and the topic given to you by the commission. Just very quickly, this is where you also talk about how you're going to manage your data. This is a page, and it needs to be a very clear page. It doesn't sound like a lot of writing, but you need to be very clear on how you're going to stick to the FAIR principles, and how it is that effectively taxpayers' money that's been given to you to run this project is not going to be mismanaged by way of mismanaging your data, and by not making it open, for example, right? If that's possible. So this is where you prove to them. The impact is the why of the project. So why is it you're doing this, and why is it important? And you've got four pages for the pathways towards impact, and then ways you're going to measure that and maximize. So the dissemination, exploitation, and communication. And just, I did this so you don't have to. This is from the the latest Horizon Europe strategic plan, the overview of the expected R&I impacts for cluster 4. I'm not going to go into any of that. You'll get this application, you can read it then. But again, they've already shown you what they really want, and you can look at it and elaborate on that. There's also cross-cluster complementaries. This is, you know, what they want you to achieve with working with other researchers as well. So it's all there for you to look at a time when I'm not there to read it off the screen for you. In terms of the impact, again, I just want to show you this. The Commission is very straightforward on a one-on-ones. This is from the actual application, paste and copied it here for you. They give you examples of how to write this, right? So you've got this specific needs, expected results, and the dissemination, exploitation, and communication measures. They give you the examples of what they want, and then they give you the space to write it up. Target groups, outcomes, impacts, it's all there. You just need to make sure you have a really well thought through, and you're working with your partners and you're working with experts. This is the bit, honestly, we usually don't let researchers touch too much, because this is where your knowledge transfer experts come in, where your communications experts come in. This is the researchers usually do the research, and this is what they're very, very good at. And then other people often deal with the rest of it. And in Europe, there will be teams helping to write out these sections, because this is not necessarily every researcher's forte. Implementation is the how. This is where you write up your work program, your work plan with your work packages. And again, I can't stress this enough. You want to make sure you've assigned the work packages in a way that really makes sense. Why is this particular person in this particular lab working on this topic, right? They have to, it is really good if they have a proven track record there. And it doesn't need to be at an excellent institution, whatever excellence means, right? At a top ranked institution. The European Commission actually prides itself on not just funding what you think are the best institutions, right? It funds the best people with the best ideas and the best answers to their calls. And again, that track record showing why is this person the perfect fit for this work package or this part of the work package, right? It doesn't have to be a whole work package assigned to one group or one team. You also want to have your deliverables and milestones, and that's always a sort of, it's the three little bears all over again, because you want just right. You don't want too much, you don't want too little, and they have to make sense with the work packages and with your full flow for the for your project. You want to make sure that the way you're structuring your deliverables and the check-in points make sense for what it is you're trying to achieve. The risk assessment, you actually really need to assess your risk. This is probably more obvious to some than others, and increasingly obviously to a growing number of people, but pretending there's no risk is not going to get you funded. You really need to show clearly, this is a lot of money we're getting. This is where we think we can fail. This is what we think can be a problem. This is what we're going to to make sure it doesn't happen. You really, really want to think through this. We've had brainstorming sessions for risk assessments that have lasted days, honestly, to make sure we get all the risks done. Person months, that's a very, very European Commission term. It's basically how long are people going to get paid for working on a particular project. You really, again, want to talk to your finance teams, your administrators, and your partners about this. It's really important. It's basically money for salaries right there. And you need to convince your reviewers that the capacity of all the participants and your consortium as a whole, you're greater together than you are separately, right? This is what you're doing. You have 3 pages for that. I don't have time for this anymore, so I've written out the key features of lump sum funding for you to look at. What's exciting, it's been introduced for newcomers to the framework program, so maybe something to look into. What to do, next steps. Talk to your colleagues in Europe, as Ellen has said. Send messages, tell them, we're in Horizon Europe. Are you working on projects? The work programs are coming out. Read them, assemble your team and your local team. Follow the guidelines at all times. Assume there's going to be plenty of iterations. I've worked on proposals that have gone through hundreds. That's what you might be looking at. Align the work packages with the milestones and deliverables. And please, please don't assume researchers are going to do most of it. They in successful applications, they rarely, if ever, do. Here's your list of resources, and thank you. I think I'm just on time, I hope this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for this. It was, I think, very useful, especially this explanation about security in research. I think it's a very important topic that is not really talked about enough. Okay, so now we will go to our next speaker, Barry Sanders, who is the scientific director of the University of Calgary's Quantum City, and who has been for many years an expert evaluator on various EU framework programs. It's not very often that we have a Canadian researcher with this type of expertise and with so many years of actually being an evaluator. And I think what will be really interesting to hear is not only about the evaluation process per se, but also Barry will share with us his perspective on how to become the expert, why to become an expert, and what it entails. Also because, as we all know, it's really important that the Canadian researchers actually get involved in many different levels of Horizon, not only as the, let's say, researchers and recipients of the grants, but also active participants in evaluation and strategic planning of the program. Okay, Barry, up to you now.
Thank you, Agnieszka. So it's a great pleasure to be able to speak to you here. My involvement with the European Commission and evaluations goes back more than 20 years. I first got involved in Framework 5. I reviewed a project in Framework 7, and I've been helping out for many years in almost every role. And then as a Canadian, I've also served on NSERC panels. And so I do have some perspective. I can tell everybody that they're completely different, that the being an evaluator, being an applicant, et cetera, between Europe and Canada, these are whole different ball games. So the main purpose of what I'm going to talk about is to understand the evaluation process, and it overlaps a lot with what Maria talked about. The perspective I'm bringing is not as a writer of a proposal, but somebody who evaluates, and also I'm acutely aware of the subtleties. You know, there's all the criteria that one has to follow, the procedures, but there's always this disconnect when you have the evaluators come in and an effort to have some particular viewpoints. And I'll go through how the process works. And one thing that's really important to understand is it's a very constrained process. So when you're an evaluator, the different evaluators come in with different opinions, but there's such tight processes that essentially everybody's brought into line, that we're just like you have to, like Maria mentioned, that you work on the criteria, you address them, and you don't try to tell the European Commission at different page numbers, that kind of thing. It's the same with the evaluators. We come in with all these different perspectives, but in the end, we're pulled into line through quality control processes. So my presentation is broken up into 3 parts. I'll talk about the experts who do the evaluation, then I'll talk about the evaluation process, and then I'll have a final slide with the key takeaways. And so the idea, Agnieszka mentioned this, that the idea is, I think I agree with the point that it's important for Canadians to become involved by being involved as an expert, which is possible. I'm proof of that, that you can work as an expert, and through being an expert, you also get not just a perspective on what's going on in Europe and who's doing what project, but also the it's good to work as an expert to understand what would happen when you apply for funding. And this is from the European Commission webpage. For this, we need experts for, and then assessing, monitoring, giving advice on specific issues. And then there's a link that one can click to register as an expert. This is a form I fill out. So every time I do it, there's various forms, and I just put in the kind of questions that are asked. So, what role would be of interest? Evaluator, rapporteur. The rapporteur is something that you kind of need a few years of experience before you can be a rapporteur. And so these days, given the experience I have, I tend to enter more on that role than as an individual evaluator. They care about experience, but they also care about bringing in new blood. So you kind of state how experienced you are, and rapporteur, the lump sum approach, and they want to know. And then I don't know how they work on the inside, but when I do it, there's always newbies involved, and so I think that they like to bring experienced people together with new people. And then this is the kind of expert we get. This is a cluster 4 invitation. And so it just gives you an idea. This is, you heard about in the first presentations about the areas quantum and photonics is part of the story. I'm a quantum scientist. And so that's how I enter, is both the quantum and the photonics. This is a kind of step forward. This is where they ask about availability and assistance. Okay, so let me tell you now the kinds of evaluators that are present. There are 3 types listed here: evaluators, observers, monitors. The one that's most relevant here is number 1. So evaluators enter as persons who evaluate the proposals. There's the IERs, independent evaluation reports. But as one gets more experience, then there's the rapporteur. I'll explain that role. Chair or vice chair. In recent years, I think they're restricted. They have been restricted to Europeans. And so I don't know at the moment whether Canadians can serve in chair or vice chair roles, but a long time ago it was possible. And the rapporteur is responsible for drafting a consensus report, and I'll go through the stages of the evaluation process. So once one is a rapporteur, after you've dealt with things, you understand all the constraints and how to score and the correlation with how to write reports, then you get to the point where you're kind of writing rapporteur reports that represent the consensus. And in many years, I've been doing evaluations for 15 years now. I've never had a single one out of very many that didn't reach consensus. So the process is very effective in being able to do that. But there are protocols if consensus is not reached. And then you can see observers, independent advice, et cetera. I haven't served in that role, but observers are present in panel meetings, and then monitors also who help. Okay, so this is a picture. I've given the link below. I've given both you the image link, and this is the Horizon 2020 online manual that I took it from. So not the Horizon Europe, but yeah, this is giving you an indication. I mean, that some things are kind of invariant over time. As time goes on, certain processes are in place. This is what I'm used to. So you can see at the beginning, the receipt of proposals and the finalization. Those are both done by the commission. My involvement is always on the middle of the evaluation process. And so there's the individual evaluations. It says usually remote. I think nowadays they're all remote. And then there's a process for writing an individual evaluation report, very specific questions, minimum word count on those. And then there's scoring. And a lot of individual evaluators are not so experienced, so often what's written can be very nice, and the score can be lower. Or sometimes people are nice where they'll give a high score, but they'll write some criticism. And so part of the process is to ensure, if it's not a perfect score, weaknesses, there's strengths and weaknesses, some weaknesses have to be identified. And so there's this process that goes on with feedback so that the evaluations are at least have an alignment between the score and the writing. And also there's all these subtext about the different criteria, what needs to be said. And so there's a tendency for people for evaluators to leave out this or that, and then you kind of push them in line and say, what about this? What about that? The consensus can be done by bringing evaluators together and running a committee, but my experience in recent years has been that we get cross readers, and I've done this. So cross readers come in, then and I'll talk a little bit more about this. You get the evaluation reports, and then you develop a consensus, and then the consensus process is really interesting because you're not allowed to really write your own thing. What you do is you go through the different criteria, excellence, impact, implementation, and then you can pull out what an evaluator did, and you kind of vote on which of your evaluations that you're reading, which is the one you prefer, reach a consensus on that, and then you're you can pick this evaluator for excellence, that evaluator for implementation. So it's a mix and match. And then there's the panel, and the panels go on a long time. They're more than a week, so 5 days in a week plus a day or two in another week. And their long process is very intense. And really the panel is about making sure everything, that all the consensus reports, all the scoring is aligned. Some fields tend to score higher than others. And then every night somebody goes through and looks for any anomalies, and you discuss all those. Okay, now this is a very full slide. I'm not going to, of course, read everything, but I'll just give you an idea. This just breaks down those 3 types. So number 1, about how the evaluation report works. And you can see, you know, they're done by 3 experts, sometimes up to 5, and 2 experts if they're low value grants. The consensus group is led by a moderator seeking a consensus, and then the output of that consensus group, which can be involving original evaluators or new members, which is the cases I deal with across readers, and coming up with a consensus form and report. And then a lot of work goes into making sure the correct wording. There's very strict rules on how to word anything, and making sure that's aligned, making sure the scores are aligned. And then when we get to the panel review, then we review all the proposals in the call, ensure alignment, scores, all that stuff. The panel chairperson is a person who works for the commission and very experienced, very professionally done, and nothing escapes their view. It's I admire the people who run that process. They're very effective at it. And then there's this whole way of doing it. We have this red and green. So through the consensus group, there's recommendations. This leads to the panel group. Red ones aren't discussed, although there's a process to elevate red to green. Green are discussed at the panel reviews. And then there's room each day that some reds might move to green. And the first order is, if anything falls below the threshold, it's red, and yeah, there's a process for doing that. And that's mentioned here. So the idea is that we identify red and green, you know, do not discuss, do discuss. And then we identify those, but we don't finalize red and green until we get approval. And then there's processes where if there's differing opinions, we try to converge. If we don't converge, and I said I've never run into that case, then there's a procedure for dealing with multiple reports that can then be brought forward to the panel to be able to deal with that. And there's strict time limits. So if you're working on this, you have to watch and make sure things are done. If you're doing some leadership role, you got to remember that some people aren't going to keep up, and you got to prod them. It's actually a little bit difficult, because when you're trying to keep track of everything and you're doing quality control or something, you don't actually have email addresses for the people. So you have to work through the system and hope that people are responsive to the system. And many times people drop the ball. So there's always a challenge of trying to get people to deliver things on time. You can see the last bullet point about check every 5 days, check that ESRs, that you've not received any notification. Then has the rapporteur done the job of the submit, you know, sort of technicalities, people not responding and all that stuff. Okay, when we write our reports, then as I said, there's very strict rules. And so we get the evaluation reports that have been tightly controlled. Then when you come up with the panel comments, you can see here that, so when we do the panel comment, we have statements that we have to put in, and very strict rules on anything that's not put in, but what we're going to insert. And you can see on the left, when we write our report, we deal with the excellence, not the impact or implementation criteria. And then you can see a concise statement clearly expressing the panel opinion of 1 paragraph overall. And we can advise not to resubmit if we think there's no hope. And then you can see on the right, that's the stuff we insert. Evaluation summary report comprises the final score, a comment, blah, blah, blah. The evaluation committee drew its conclusions on the basis of the individual evaluation score and the outcome of its consensus discussion. So boilerplate statements. And then we add to that the excellent statement. What I've done here, this kind of shows you, this is working from the system. So we don't email, we work within that system. And I've blacked out, or I guess I blued out in this case, which proposal, I don't want to leak that information. And it's generic here, so you can't figure out what the report was. but this is the process of coming after we've come to some consensus. And then it says, I've drafted panel comments for discussion here. So these comments emerge out of the consensus report and come to the evaluation committee. It comprises final score, the boilerplate statements, and then you go down further and it says the total score for the proposal is 4.20. So it's above threshold. The score for excellence in particular is 4.0. So it's above threshold. And it says these scores meet or exceed the threshold. They're consistent with the evaluations, correspond to the proposal being assessed as very good. It's not excellent. And then a statement conveying what the view is that would be adopted by the panel, ambitious and novel, but does not make a strong case for this project substantially advancing the field or offering a strong advantage over competing approaches. Let me just give you a bit of historical context. So when I started writing evaluations and getting involved with committees, those days it was nice. It was in person in Brussels. So there was a lot of interaction with European Commission and understanding better why the rules were what they were. And one of the key issues is the people don't like getting low scores or don't like being criticized. So anything you write can be used against you. And so the idea of writing these statements is capturing what is the essence for that score, focusing mostly on the excellence, but then that statement is then used to justify the score when people are pushing back. And it's so common to have the pushback that you really need a tight statement there. Okay, this is my final slide. And so the final slide, it's some key takeaways. And some of this came up in what Maria said too, and I just want to reinforce the statement. The criteria are listed. She went through those criteria. They need to be addressed succinctly, directly, clearly, and convincingly. We evaluators are held to a high standard, and we have to make very tight statements and justify and come to consensus. And I can tell you that most project proposals I deal with, even by experienced people, actually don't do a good job. It's often verbose, indirect, and so, you know, and on some level, you kind of respect the people who put in the projects. You want to help them out, but if they don't put the statements in a way I think of as spoon feeding, if they're not spoon fed to me, it's very tough for me or other evaluators to defend the proposal. You know, we're told over and over again, go by what's written, not what we interpret. And so the criteria written a particular way, address the criteria, use words straight from what that document says. Don't bury the lead. Don't put the message deep in a paragraph. Start off with how it's addressed. You know, use this journalistic way of thinking. You know, what is the lead, and then work your way through it. The criteria, excellence, impact, implementation need to be addressed. As you see in our reports, it's the excellence that we focus on when we write a panel statement, long-term vision and targeted breakthrough. And how do these things connect together? And the vision goes beyond the lifetime of the proposal. You know, how are you going to change the world? What is the breakthrough? You know, what goes beyond state of the art? What is that breakthrough? Write the objectives. Objectives should be written in a smart way, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, not some vague statements. And the methodology, Maria mentioned this, it's very tough to write good methodology. And on the one hand, it has to be written clearly for independent evaluators who are experts in the domain, and they might have different approaches. So some of them might like it, but some of them are going to have their own way of doing things. At the same time, it's got to be understandable up to the consensus report where, so the consensus group where we're not directly experts, and we have to be able to read and understand that too to make opinions. And so there's a balancing act about how to write the methodology. So it's understandable to that range, and it's got to be convincing. And the convincing is really, does the person know state of the art? If somebody leaves out key references or ignores what other groups do that's different, that can be fatal in the process. So the objectives have to be really clear. And then this is something, and Maria mentioned how you need experts who aren't scientists or technologists involved. There's the whole project planning, project engineering approach. What are the risks? What are the mitigations? And risks are not just scientific risks. Risks are you don't get a machine on time, you can't hire people, a pandemic hits, you know, all these things. How are they mitigated? And usually I find in projects, people just kind of pick a random assortment of risks and trivial mitigations. And so everything that goes in should be high risk, high gain. And the risk and mitigation is really important in the proposal. Milestones should be written properly. They should be evaluatable by a third party without resources. They should tie with the risk. I don't find these are done well in many cases. Deliverables are things that are delivered. A lot of statements of deliverables aren't deliverables. So get somebody on the team who understands how to write real plans. And finally, put together the consortium in a way that every member of the consortium is properly justified. And something we're asked about is whether the resource allocation is balanced. Is the resource, so bring in the consortium members, be sure that they have somewhat equal roles and vital roles, and that the resources allocated for different members are adequate for them to be able to play the role, and be sure that their roles are clear in work packages and activities. Okay, I think that's my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. I think that was really useful for everyone. I always want to, underline how different this evaluation process is, how complex on many, many levels for the evaluators. And it's not really enough even to be the expert in the domain. You also have to know quite a lot about the actual process of the project implementation to be able to do this. So thank you. And now we are moving to the last big panel of the webinar, and this is actually an interesting one, because especially in the Canadian context, I would say we are very lucky to have with us a project that deals with the critical minerals or critical raw materials, as it's called in Europe. So I would like to invite on stage Marie Beauvais-Marchal, who is the critical minerals and materials analyst at OFREMI, which is the French Observatory of Mineral Resources for industrial sectors. And she works at the French Geological Survey on the project that we will be presenting. The project is called SCREEN, and I put the link in the chat for everyone, so you can go and have a look. And I also would like to invite to the stage Alessandra Hall, who joins us from Switzerland, actually, and this is for me very exciting, because we have with us a representative of an institution located in a country that is not a European Union country, but is associated to Horizon, so exactly like Canada is. And Alessandra is the managing director of the ESM Foundation, a Swiss organization dedicated to fostering research and development in critical raw materials. So I would like to start with Marie, and maybe I would like to invite you, Marie, to tell us a little bit about the project that you are participating in, that you're leading, and explain to us its objectives, and also how it is constructed, because I think it's a little bit different from a typical research project in Horizon, and it's a new example.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Agnesa, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Just first of all, I'm not leading the project. I'm replacing my colleague Gaëtan Lefebvre, but I'm very happy to explain what is the project about. So Screen 3 stands for a solution for critical raw materials, a European expert networks. And as you mentioned, it's really related to critical raw material as it aims to supporting the European Commission and especially DG GROW in its assessment exercise of critical raw materials. So it's already the third screen project. There was also Screen 1, Screen 2. It's organized every 3 years based on the regularity of the criticality assessment of the European Union. And it involves 15 research and technology organization or organizations across Europe and more or less 200 experts. So maybe just another word about the screen project. So there are really two key aspects that we can mention at this stage, really the European network. So finding more experts and sharing more expertise according to the critical raw materials. So this is very important for us to expand and to strengthen our expert networks in Europe and also internationally. And the second point is the fact sheets that you might see on the link that Agnesa put about the website. So this is really the core of the screen project. So each critical raw material is described and analyzed through fact sheets, which are about 20 pages each. And this is about raising awareness of the overview of the value chain, the market analysis, trade and prices, also everything related to the demand and the supply for each critical material. And there are also very key insights about substitution or recycling. So this is a relevant source of data, which is public in order to raise awareness among the stakeholders about these issues in Europe and globally. Yeah.
Thank you. So can we just maybe talk a little bit about your experience with the project or project structure, I would say. I understand that this is the third edition of the project, right? Throughout the years, right?
Absolutely.
So has it been always funded by the framework programs? This is the question that I have, number one. And the second, how over the years your experience with consortium developed, and can you maybe talk a little bit about the current structure of your consortium and the partners,
Yes,
where
of
they
course.
are and why they are there?
Yeah, of course. So this is the third edition. Originally, actually, there was a smaller project aiming at analyzing a few materials, so only 4, I think, but which already involved several RTO across Europe. So geological survey institutes are used to work together and to collaborate, but with the Screen 3, the little change that we had was maybe more focusing on the harmonization of the analysis. Before, for Screen 2, there was even more research organization involved. I think it was 20 or even more. And the group today is about 15 organizations. And each organization is basically responsible on one fact sheet about critical raw material, apart from the work which is done for networking and which is done also for foresight reports, which are very also key in order to provide DG GROW and the European Commission with a strong and deep analysis of the technological gap or the market for one critical material or the risks. So right now for Screen 3, we went from several partners working on one fact sheet, one critical material fact sheet, with one partner in charge of one fact sheet. And this is also more interesting for the research organization because they can then have a more transverse glance at all the sections that I mentioned before, such as the demand, the supply, the overview of the value chain. And of course, they are urged to work much more with a network of experts. So the aim of Screen 3 is also to expand this network of experts, to organize workshops with them and to have also a selection process which is a bit more organized. So based on the paper previous research of experts who would like to apply to be in the screen network. So these are a few changes over the year based on the previous experience that we had about the previous experiences and about the partner. So these are basically the key partner in Europe about geology and about critical mineral value chain. All of them were able to express their interests and their expertise in order to pick one critical raw material they would like to work about, or to offer also to the consortium to work on specific topic or report, which was then about gathering more people interested in and having the expertise. So this is both very structured, but also partners are able to express their interest and to position themselves on new topics.
Thank you. So then I would like to talk to the partner. Alessandra, can you tell us about your own path towards participation in this project? How did that come about? And how did you really create or shape your role in the consortium?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are quite happy to be part of the Screen 3 project. So we were not in the Screen 1 and 2. And when we were asked by the coordinator, that was for us kind of a no-brainer. The reason for it is that, as Marie has explained, the Screen project is really fundamental in the EU criticality assessment. And as some people here might know, that's actually one of the bases then for EU policies on critical raw materials. So in our field, where our foundation is working on critical raw materials risks, mitigation and policies, that's really at the core. As you said, Agnieszka, we are Swiss, so we're not a member of the EU. So as Canada, we are like a third party in this horizon. For us, it's a bit different. So the Switzerland evaluates again what was evaluated by the EU, and then we get the funding via Switzerland. But I mean, the status in practice is similar, I would say, and that is also, of course, for us was another motivator to join the consortium, because working with the EU experts on EU policies on EU critical raw materials, of course, gives us Switzerland also an added value and helps us to help our policymakers to kind of take an example on what the EU is doing, because our raw materials risks are, of course, closely tied to the EU raw materials risks. So our role in this project is, and we're mainly working on the foresight and outlook reports. Marie has mentioned them. So this is also very closely aligned to our foundation's mission and also in our expertise, because we are having an international network on critical raw materials. So we try to monitor the policy situation, and then we draft these reports that, in collaboration with DG GROW, that then serve as a basis for them for information they are looking for.
So I would like now to move, well, maybe I will ask a follow-up question, because you are talking about this project as the network, you work with experts. Do you have many Canadian experts on critical raw materials in your network?
No, actually, we don't. we would be happy to have more Canadian experts in our network. I think for us it's really relevant. So reach out to us if you'd like to, especially in this international expert network. But I'm sure that also for the Screen Consortium, it would be very interesting to have in these expert networks also Canadian experts. So I think Marie, Gaëtan, and we would all be happy if you would get in touch with us if you're interested in collaboration on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just, I didn't know, so that was a curiosity. So good to know that I actually asked. I hope that will encourage some of our listeners. I would like now to maybe move to the topic that is a little bit tricky. It's a topic about lessons learned. Because when you implement a project, you participate in a project, there's some lessons learned that are very important for the future. And it's not only when I'm thinking about lessons learned, I'm thinking about the anything that has to do with the management of the project, the day-to-day management. So maybe Marie will start, and then Alessandra, you can add. What was the main challenge you can think about when you think about implementation of that project? And what would you do maybe differently in the future? And what is for you very important to remember when you are implementing a project like this?
So of course, in terms of organization, this means a lot of coordination between the partners. So make sure that there is actually an executive committee which is meeting every 2 months, more or less, and which is really in charge of talking then to DG Grow and updating and reporting, especially the most advancements. So, and then to coordinate with the 15 research organization. Maybe 15 doesn't look that much. However, there are many people within each organization which are involved. So this is probably, maybe 80 people involved in total. So one of the challenge really was the thing that I mentioned before about the harmonization of the work. So each organization has its own way of working. So for Screen3 was implemented a digitalization tool, which is really to provide all the partner with the same basis in order they build the fact sheet, in order they can work with the same level of data, that they can produce the same figures and the same graphs. So everything related to digitalization and automatization of the data is really a key point in order to make the work more efficient. And also the challenge of bringing up on board more experts is very important, whether it's experts, technical experts, or experts about the markets, economy, in order to organize workshop where people can react about the data. And also a key point here is really to make sure that we can involve and work with academics, research organization, or the industry as well, because this is through the industry that we can get the most sometimes insights about the risk on the critical raw material supply chain disruption, and also how important in terms of economy is would be a supply disruption for a value chain. So we are really trying to open the eyes on several type of organization in order to have the most relevant multi-criteria analysis among experts. Yeah.
Alessandra, would you like to add to that?
Yeah.
Your own observation?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I also think 15 is not so small. I think the project is very well structured. As a member of a work package, I can say that it's also very important to have a good structure in the work packages itself. So you usually, as was mentioned before by other speakers, you have a work package coordinator. It's important that this person takes their role seriously, and digital tools come in, but I think it's very important that everybody is always kind of up to date, who does what, to define deadlines and so on, also within the work package. That's especially important because for me, it was also mentioned before, there's a completely new concept of the lump sum that was mentioned. So that means that basically the payment is made once the work package is completely completed by all members. So that means that you're even more dependent on each other, and it's really important that you're in a very strong and effective dialogue with your partners. Then this is maybe specific to the type of, this is a CSA, a corporate support action screen project. Maybe, I think it's different in innovation and research projects, but in this CSA, we're closely working together with the Commission, with DG GROW, and especially in the field that we're doing on the foresight and outlook reports. With the current policy changes, there are a lot of adaptations, of course. I mean, when you propose a proposal today on critical raw materials, you're not going to know, what is important in 1 year or 2 years. So that requires a lot of flexibility of all partners and a lot of communication. So that's definitely a learning I also have. And yeah, lastly, maybe that's my experience from other projects, also from this one. I think what is sometimes a bit lacking also in other projects I see is to actually look around what is already there. Are there other projects that doing, things that are similar? And to already have that in mind in the proposal, but also during the work. So can we find synergies maybe with other undertakings? Because I often have the impression that there are projects working in parallel that really don't know what others are doing. And I think we all can improve in that still.
Can I follow up a little bit on this? Because I heard two things actually. From Marie, I heard about the different working cultures across institutions and also relevance across Europe in a way for the industry. What actually means that you are probably working with a lot of different countries. Who work in different languages. Is that's an issue as well in your work? How do you deal with this type of diversity? If your project has to deliver really policy relevant information, this is the question that I have. And to Alessandra, you were talking about the challenge of that work package. So could you tell us a little bit more how many different actors are involved in one work package? Because it's not very clear always that the level of complexity. And last but not least, I realized we never really talked about how you met. I mean, how was it that the foundation was actually invited to the project? So I don't know who would. Yeah, maybe Maria will go first. Marie.
So yeah, as you said, there are several countries involved, 13 countries actually. So France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Slovenia, Slovakia, so Switzerland, Spain. Maybe I forgot a few of them. We are all speaking English, so there is no issue about languages. And also we all work under the umbrella of the Critical Raw Material Act and the guidance of DG GROW when before the Critical Raw Material Act in terms of policy. So there is quite harmonization on this. And really the added value of this network is to have a better view of the critical raw material value chain, really, because we can know our industry and we know how sometimes it's challenging at the national level to talk to the industry and to get relevant insights. But when there are several organizations involved across countries, then it makes a very relevant light on the understanding of the value chain. And this is really important because it helps to preserve European sovereignty and to also build up some more partnership internationally with like-minded countries. So this is it's really important. But I wouldn't say that the culture is an issue. I would say that it's more about, as Alessa mentioned, about the coordination of each work package and precisely knowing who makes who, who makes what. Sorry, and go ahead. Yes.
Alessandra?
Yeah, I think in the screen, the work packages are structured around types of raw materials. So, for example, you have a work package on non-ferrous metals, and then you would have all the experts working on that in one. In the work packages we are mainly involved in the Foresight and Outlook reports, basically every partner has a minimal role in it. It's like, because of course you want to have the expertise of all the partners in whatever you submit to the Commission, and that actually means that the role of each partner for each Outlook report has to be very well defined. And since you don't really know what the Foresight report in a year will be, you have to, on the go define who delivers what. So I think that's maybe a very specific challenge, but I think in other projects, also in work packages that deal, for example, with communication, everything that is a bit integrating, you will probably have that challenge. I met the consortium, Marie, and also the coordinator during our, we have a common critical raw materials event at the Raw Materials Week in Brussels each year, together with our internationalization project, the International Roundtable on Materials Criticality, and SCREEN. And this is also something I would like to add, because I also saw a question. Of course, there are these networking events, I think, by these specific events on funding, but there's also a lot of opportunities to enter project in thematic events, and for critical raw materials, that would definitely be the European Commission's Raw Materials Week.
Yeah, this is actually an important tip for all of us, right? It's really important not to get too focused on only the specific open days or horizon days, but really to get out and out there, and to look for people and for projects thematically. That's really true. So that actually leads us to the last question that I had. So I had the question about your advice to Canadian and researchers and institutions who are interested. So Alessandra, you already gave an advice how to find a project, but Marie, Alessandra, if you have any other tips or ideas for the Canadian researchers and institutions, how to get involved?
For SCREEN specifically, you mean? Or in, okay,
Oh, in general, yes, in general.
Okay, in general, I think this is always useful, and it has been mentioned before, to proceed to a kind of benchmark of the other consortium. I think, Alessa, you mentioned it before, in order to be sure to provide a competitive advantage, let's say, or to provide an added value in terms of research or in terms of support for decision making, which is a case for SCREEN. And also something that I heard before from the previous speaker is the fact of really relying on the way that the calls are expressed, and to try to that this is how we proceed. So to try to really rely on the objectives, how they are formalized in the calls, and to be quite in the flow, in the box. I don't know which word is the most relevant here. And in terms of SCREEN, to emphasize again, but this would be totally possible for anyone who would be interested to jump in, to be an expert. So this is really about reaching us with this application, because I saw a question about this also in the chat. So.
Yeah, I can only, I think what Marie says, it's all very true. I also was said before, sometimes I think if you don't know the background of a call, it's much more difficult than if you have somebody who actually explains, you know, a little bit more what's behind it. So the national contact point or an expert that is working on a similar topic from your network is always helpful, and I think provides you a much better starting point than just taking the call and, you know, try to do your own thing. I think it's super that Canada is involved in this. I think it's really important that we work together as you know, countries that share certain values. And I also want to encourage, you know, to say to everybody, don't get discouraged by the lot of complicated cluster things and the finances that look really difficult. It looks more difficult than it is in the end, especially if you have a good coordinator, as we have in the SCREEN project. It's not really a problem to navigate. And also, if you want to coordinate a project, if you have a good national contact point, it's much easier than the administration in the EU looks maybe at first glance.
Right. So it's not too complicated. This is our message every time that we try to convey. Okay, I think that I have only one question in the chat that I think you could answer, Marie. And this is the question from Clotilde Ribot, who is asking, can you add a partner on an ongoing project? It looks difficult due to the budget. What are your thoughts about this?
I think as an expert, it would be totally possible and very welcome. And then the partner is able to join the expert workshops and therefore to work with the consortium of SCREEN. And then, about adding a new partner as an institutional member of the consortium. To be honest, I would need to get more information about it. I wouldn't be sure. But as a first step into the whole process, applying for expertise would be a great way to get involved with the others.
Yeah. I think that we can stop now and we can move to the last part of our webinar. So we have few questions in the chat for everyone, I would say. And I think that while we were talking, we answered already 20 questions during the last few hours. I wanted to ask maybe Maria Pawłowska to answer the question about a non-profit organization participation, if she has any views on that, and maybe Hélène as well. There is a question in the chat, and does this mean, I don't remember what it was, but the question is, but basically, can a not-for-profit organization participate as a subsidiary or provider, and they cannot participate as the main the main partner, institutional partner?
So
what is the role of NGOs and civil society organizations in Horizon?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. And as an NGO or civil society organization, you can participate just like anyone else. You can lead, you can be a partner. As a Canadian-based organization, any in associated countries or EU members, you don't have to be a for-profit organization. You don't have to be a research organization. You have to fulfill all the other criteria, so have the right number of partners from the right countries, apply for the call, etc., etc. But there's nothing stopping NGOs from applying. Thank you. I hope that answers it. I hope that was clear enough.
I confirm. Yes. Your organization are totally welcome to take part in Horizon Europe projects. Of course, because I know that before there was another question, but about a not-for-profit funding agency, which was a different question. But I think maybe that's
Was
the
different.
confusion. Yeah. But yeah, I confirm
So-
that.
Thank you, Hélène. And I have, Hélène, another question to you from Maya Berger. Oh my gosh, this is moving here. Who is asking about the salary. Are salaries of the investigators actually covered by the Horizon funding? I think it has been maybe answered while we were talking.
Yes, sorry, I answered it.
But I would say that Helen can actually answer that live as well.
Okay, for my partners, sorry. Yeah, yes, I confirm as well. Maria just answered perfectly. Yes, it's. I can just confirm.
Okay, so there is another question about the deadlines. So do clusters and projects already need to be formed before the official publication of the work program?
Sorry, I don't understand.
So maybe I think that the question meant do the consortia is there a requirement or best practice for the consortia to be already formed before the publication of the work program?
Already get funding before the publication?
Yeah.
No,
Is that-
actually,
Is that
no.
good? No?
No,
Right.
I mean, your a project always has to be original and new, and the idea is not to fund something that has already been funded. It's something new and original. So, and you have to apply to the topic and to the call for proposals when they are open within the deadlines. And yes, and it's an original and unique project that will be funded. After, if you have preliminary results to start preparing to answer the topic and to prepare the project, which has been funded before. Yes, I mean, it's important to have some preliminary results in some cases. I don't know, but the project in itself is really unique when you apply to the Horizon Europe funding. I don't know if it was clear. My answer was clear.
I mean, it's always a good practice to have at least some, I would say, stakeholders and research institutions, industry stakeholders mapped, but not necessarily already in a consortium. It's more in the preparatory stage. You just scan the environment, right, and try to understand who might be your potential partner, but you wait until you really know what is there in the work program, I would say. Okay. We have questions about eligibility. So still that there is the question about the status of non-profit funding agency. But there are also questions about this April 1 application deadline. Apparently, the anonymous attendee says ICET has an April 1 application deadline. Do consortia and projects need to be finalized for this Canadian application? Maria, do you have any views on this?
I maybe Tamara is the right person.
Yes,
Tamara?
if Tamara is with us, that would be lovely to
I,
answer.
I dare not speak on behalf of ICED.
Because, well, we really cannot answer that question. And when Tamara joins us, she can probably answer it what it is. Oh, Tamara Sonner from ICED, the country, national coordinator of national contact points in Canada, is here. And would you like to answer that, Tamara?
Is that the question about the reviewing work at the tri-agency?
No, it's a question. ICED has an April 1 application deadline for Horizon, I suppose.
No, that we don't have an application deadline. Not for Horizon Europe. It might be for a different program.
Thank you for the clarification. So this
Yeah,
is
it might
actually
be
not
under the
relevant.
no, it might be or it might be like a not ICED, but one of the tri-agencies might have a funding program to support researchers. And that might be that, but yeah, not directly ICED. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, and then we have a question to Barry. So can you elaborate a bit about the difference between the reviewing work for tri-agency and Horizon based on your experience, and what is your advice for Canadian researchers who might use their tri-agency experience to prepare for an application for Horizon Europe, which might not be very helpful or even misleading?
So the tri-agency process is very strict in a different way. You know, we have limited time per discussion, voting, median scores, all that kind of stuff. So having experience with the tri-agencies, being a reviewer, is really helpful to be able to also be able to be effective with the European Commission review process. But I don't recall them ever asking that. Like, you have to submit a CV and stuff, but in my experience, they're much more interested in the European Commission involvement. My advice is, you know, it is helpful to have that experience, but they do like new blood and they do want to diversify, including geographically. So whether or not you have the experience, just do the application and see if it works. And then you build up your experience. And if you stick with it long enough, it gets very rewarding because you gradually move up the ranks and you get more involved with interesting processes to try to allocate funding in a fair way.
Thank you. And it's always, if I may add, it's really you learn how to write a project by evaluating a project as well. That this is the mechanics of this, because you have the opportunity to look at the projects from a different perspective, right? You are more critical than of your own writing, if it happens. And there is another question to you, Barry. Will a reviewer assess all proposals for a given call, or only a subset, or only one?
Oh, yeah, for a given call, there are many, many proposals. So I think in cases I've been in, it's impossible to assess all, but I might get 10 proposals that I have to assess. And then each one is assessed individually. I don't do a comparison. And calls are much broader. Yeah, so that's how it works. And then as you go up, if you then go to the panels, then you're exposed to every proposal in a call, the green ones. So at some level, you're exposed to everything, but no, it'd be too much work to be able to assess every proposal in a call.
Thank you. Okay, and the last question for today is the question that we got from Mikhail Genkin. Does the consortium need to include industry partners, or is it possible to have just academic organizations? And I would like Maria to answer this, Maria Pawłowska.
Yes, thank you for specifying which Maria. So, okay, it's not technically formally a requirement. However, especially for cluster 4 and honestly for just about all clusters at this point, this is an R&D program. I think it's really worth just repeating that. Horizon Europe is a research and development funding program, not a pure research funding program. And the best way to show impact and the best way to show that you can actually translate your results into something real is to have a company interested in them and working with you. So it doesn't say anywhere in the requirements you must have a business with you or you are ineligible for funding. However, especially with something as industry heavy as cluster 4, I see projects without an industry partner having an incredibly hard time getting funded, if they get funded at all. It just really lacks the credibility needed for this cluster in particular. Thank you.
So I don't see any new questions. The rest, if needed, please do not hesitate. You can always write us and we can try to answer in writing. So now I will invite to the stage a person who's already on the stage at the Q&A, and Tamara Sonne, the National Contact Point Coordinator for Horizon Europe. As I said, thank you for being with us, and please shed the light.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. As Edgy mentioned, I'm the NCP coordinator for Canada, and I work at the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada Department, ISED. My team was responsible for negotiating the Horizon Europe agreement, and we have a lot of resources available to Canadians. So while my fellow speakers have provided a lot of excellent background information and detailed information on the program and what to expect and how to apply and how it's evaluated, I'm here to sort of help navigate you through that process from a Canadian perspective. So what support? So as we talked a little bit, this is a slide that we have before. So how do you find partners and collaborators? This is, they talked earlier, using your own network, participating in information days, Brussels, online, funding and tenders portal, the European Enterprise Network, which is for mostly for industry to find partners. Of course, Cordis is an excellent source. This is the website where all of the successful projects are outlined, and you can really find an excellent way to find resources or researchers that are working on similar projects to yours. Of course, national contact points like myself, industry associations, and research publications. So at the bottom of research publications, you'll find names of other researchers that are in your area of interest. So what are national contact points? Well, National Contact Point is the main structure to provide guidance and practical information and assistance and participation in Horizon Europe. In general, the subject matter experts in our field and have a strong awareness in domestic and international expertise in our cluster. So who are the Canadian NCPs? These are all, so we have at least one NCP for every cluster under Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. It's important to note that that all of these NCPs are Government of Canada employees. As part of our association to Horizon Europe, we can attend what is called program committee meetings. These are the meetings where the work program is decided and discussed while we are not EU member state. So we do not have ability to vote on the program. We're able to attend and provide feedback on it. So that's an exciting example of association. But we have under Cluster 4, we have Steve Motomy, Carlos Levy, and June Sun. Very soon we'll be having an industry-specific NCP will be added, but since they have not officially signed up yet, they haven't signed their MOU, they're not yet on the website, but once they do, they will be added. So we have, see if there's more for the other clusters. And again, this is all on our website. So what is the first steps, as we talked about earlier? You register your organization, and you upload your profile on the funding and tenders website. You know, this is all things that were discussed earlier, searching for topics of interest to find the upcoming calls. They'll be posted in early May. And again, as mentioned earlier, attend those info sessions. It's a really good way to get a good sense of the calls and what evaluators will be looking for. Again, searching through projects through Portis, through Network, participate in the brokerage events. So afterwards there'll be brokerage events, which will be highlighted. You reach out to us as the Canada's national contact points, and you pursue your project goals. And I wish you all luck in that. So for general information, you want to visit our dedicated ISET webpage. We will be updating it regularly. And if you want to have a general question, the best way to get in contact to get a Canadian specific response to any question you have is please go to our Horizon Europe inbox. It is the best source to find Canadian specific answers to your questions. If you don't have, and we can point you in the national contact points if you're not sure where to go. And that is it for me. So thank you very much. Any questions?
I think you actually have a question about the NCP contact point for cluster 6, but I think you answered that question already with your presentation. So we invite you to go and see ISET Horizon Europe website. It's very good and very comprehensive. And thank you.
You're very welcome.
So I think that this is the time we actually close this webinar. And so I invite Sara Pinheiro Lozano again to the stage to say the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Agnieszka, for doing such a wonderful job as a moderator. Thank you, really, Tamara, for joining us on this session. And of course, I wanted to thank very much the speakers and our experts for really preparing such a great webinar. I really hope that you all found it useful. I've seen, that there are quite a few questions on the chat and a very lively Q&A session. So as Agnieszka mentioned, please don't hesitate to contact us for either more questions or suggestions on how we can or where we could do more webinars or information sessions. We would very much welcome any type of feedback that you could give us. This session will be recorded as the same as for the other ones, and you can rewatch it in our EU delegation YouTube channel. And please also join us if you want, or pass on the information to your colleagues for our next webinar, which will take place on 10th of April on Cluster 5. Thank you so much again for joining us, and see you soon. Bye.